Once upon a time, in a small village nestled among snowy mountains, lived a young girl named Marushka. She was as gentle and kind as a spring flower, but her life was anything but beautiful. After her mother passed away, her father remarried a woman with a daughter of her own, Helena. From that day on, Marushka's life became a winter of hardship. Her stepmother and stepsister despised her for her beauty and sweet nature. They made her do all the work, from scrubbing the floors to mending their clothes, while they sat by the fire, warm and lazy. Marushka never complained. She did every task with a quiet grace, her heart filled with memories of her loving mother. One cold day in the middle of January, the snow lay thick upon the ground, and the wind howled like a hungry wolf. Helena, in a fit of cruel fancy, declared, "Marushka, I want some fresh violets. Go into the forest, and don't come back until you have a bouquet for me." The stepmother smirked, and added, "Your sister wants violets. Go now, and don't you dare return empty-handed." Marushka's heart sank. Violets in the dead of winter. It was impossible. "But dear sister, how can I find violets under all this snow? They don't bloom until spring," she pleaded. Helena just laughed, a sound as cold as the icicles hanging from the roof. "That's your problem, not mine." With that, they shoved her out the door into the biting cold, with only a thin shawl to protect her from the blizzard. The forest was a desolate, white world. The trees stood like silent, frozen giants, their branches heavy with snow. Marushka wandered aimlessly, her feet numb and her tears freezing on her cheeks. The wind whipped at her thin clothes, and she soon lost her way. Hope began to fade as the darkness of dusk crept in. She was cold, hungry, and utterly alone. "Is this the end?" she whispered to the unfeeling wind. Just as she was about to give up and lie down in the snow, she saw a faint light flickering in the distance. A tiny spark of hope ignited within her. Gathering her last bit of strength, she stumbled towards the light, praying it wasn't just a trick of her tired eyes. As she drew closer, she saw a wondrous sight. A great bonfire roared on a hilltop, its flames dancing against the dark sky. Around the fire sat 12 men, wrapped in cloaks of varying colors and textures. They were silent, each with a staff in his hand, their faces both ancient and ageless. Some had long, white beards frosted with ice, while others were young and rosy-cheeked. At the highest point sat an old man with a beard as white as the snow itself, his staff glowing with an inner light. This was Great January. Marushka was frightened, but the warmth of the fire was too inviting to resist. She approached them timidly, her voice barely a whisper. "Kind sirs, may I please warm myself by your fire for a moment? The cold has seeped into my very bones." Great January looked at her, his eyes deep and piercing. "What brings you to our fire, little one, in the heart of winter?" he asked, his voice like the rumble of a distant avalanche. Marushka, shivering, told them her story. She explained how her stepsister had sent her to find violets in the snow. She didn't complain about her cruel family. She simply stated her impossible task. The 12 men listened intently. They were the 12 months, the guardians of the seasons. They saw the honesty in her eyes and the purity of her heart. They pitied the gentle girl who had been treated so cruelly. Great January turned to a younger man with a cheerful face and a cloak the color of new leaves. "Brother March," he said, "it is your turn." He then handed his glowing staff to March. As Mars took the staff and waved it over the fire, a magical change swept through the forest. The bonfire blazed higher, the snow began to melt rapidly, and tiny green shoots poked through the damp earth. The trees budded, birds began to sing, and a warm, fragrant breeze filled the air. Suddenly, the ground around them was carpeted with a sea of purple violets, their sweet scent a miracle in the winter air. Marushka gasped in amazement. "Quickly, little one, gather them," said March with a smile. Marushka joyfully picked a large bouquet, her heart overflowing with gratitude. She thanked the 12 months profusely before hurrying home, the impossible gift clutched in her hands. When Marushka arrived home with the fragrant violets, her stepmother and Helena were speechless. They snatched the flowers from her, refusing to believe her story about the 12 men. But the undeniable scent of spring filled their small cottage, and greed began to fester in their hearts. A few days later, Helena demanded, "I want fresh strawberries. Go back to the forest and get me some." Once again, the stepmother forced Marushka out into the cold. Marushka, remembering the kindness of the months, went without protest. She found the hilltop fire again and politely explained her new quest. This time, Great January passed his staff to a strong, sun-kissed man in a bright red cloak. "Brother June," he commanded. June waved the staff, and instantly the sun shone brightly. The snow vanished, the ground turned lush and green, and wild strawberry plants sprang up, laden with ripe red fruit. It was as if summer had arrived in a single moment. Marushka gathered a whole apron full of sweet strawberries, thanked the months with all her heart, and rushed back home. The sight and taste of fresh summer strawberries in the middle of winter drove Helena and her mother mad with envy. She must have found a place of great treasure. The stepmother hissed, "This time, you will go, Helena. Don't come back with just fruit. Find the source, and bring back everything you can." Helena, greedy and arrogant, eagerly wrapped herself in a warm fur coat and set off. She found the fire on the hilltop easily enough. But instead of asking politely, she marched right up to the fire without a word, and tried to push her way closer to the warmth. "Why are you here?" rumbled Great January. Helena snapped back rudely, "It's none of your business, old man. Just give me some of whatever you gave my sister." The 12 months stared at her, their faces turning to stone. Her disrespect and greed had angered them. Great January frowned, his brow furrowed like a stormy sky. "Kindness is met with kindness," he said, his voice dropping to a freezing whisper. "But rudeness and greed must face the cold." He raised his staff high, not to pass it to a gentler month, but to summon the full fury of winter. The fire dwindled to a few sputtering embers. A terrible blizzard erupted, a storm fiercer than any seen before. The wind howled and screamed, burying the hilltop in a mountain of snow. Helena, blinded and terrified, tried to run, but the storm consumed her. Her mother waited and waited at home, but Helena never returned. She went out to search for her, but she too was lost to the unforgiving storm. They had been punished by the very winter they had so foolishly challenged. Marushka, however, inherited the cottage, the farm, and a life of peace. The magic of the 12-month had not only saved her, but had also shown that true wealth is gold or jewels. The moral of this story is a timeless one. Kindness, humility, and a gentle spirit are treasures that will always be rewarded, sometimes in the most magical of ways. While cruelty and greed may seem powerful for a moment, they ultimately lead to a cold and lonely end. remember to treat others with the same warmth you wish to receive from the world. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this tale of magic and kindness, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories. See you next time.
Good night from Sleepy Tale.